me and Elsa moving back to Romania. And I remember I told my friends here in Germany that I would be staying in Romania somewhere between 3 and 6 months, or 9 months the most. And I ended up staying in Romania for a year and a half, which was quite a surprise because I didn't expect it. Another thing that we tried to do is inform our daughter about our wish to adopt, and we told her from the beginning. Actually, we asked her if she wants a sibling, and she said yes, I want a brother or a sister. So we started praying with her every night before she would go to bed for a brother or a sister, and she seemed pretty happy with the idea of having someone her age. But she was 2 years old, so I think she wasn't really aware of what a sibling in her life might mean. But anyhow, she was on board with our decision, so this was easy for us. And I remember our friends from Romania asking me if it's hard to adopt, and I was only in the first months into the adoption process, and I said no, it's not hard to adopt, because I was just in the beginning of the process. But I didn't know what was about to come, because in the first 3 months I was just evaluated and I was meeting with the people from CPS every 2 weeks. So nothing was really complicated in the beginning. But what was challenging was
the fact that I was still in Germany and they were in Romania, and there's a 2 hours flight between Germany and Romania. And it might sound easy and fast, but we live in a village near Heidelberg and taxis are expensive and the bus connection is very bad. So I had to resort to my usual means of transportation, which is the bike. I invested in a good bike trailer with an impermeable bag that I could use also during my other longer bike trips. And off I went, first to the train station in Heidelberg, where I secured my bike and trailer in the parking lot of our office, and then took the bus to the airport in Frankfurt, and then the flight and the taxi back home in Romania. So altogether it was about a 7-hour trip. With some buffers built in for making sure that the plane or the bus aren't late, or for fixing a flat tire. I also asked myself, like any other person thinking about adoption, if I would be able to love an adoptive child as much as I do Elsa. And I had all the theoretical answers to this question and the solid motivation for adoption, but in the end it had to be a leap of faith. I had to come to terms with the fact that I could really not predict 100% accurately how I would feel about our future son or daughter. But I remember how I felt when Elsa came into our world, when I held her in my arms for the first time. I did not all of a sudden feel an overwhelming love that would come down upon me the first days or weeks. She still felt a bit like an intruder in our peaceful lives. And I believe that doesn't mean I didn't love her, because I loved her and I cared for her as best I could. But the inner feeling of love took its time to show up during the first months. And my experience with adopted child, looking back now, after more than 1 year, is somewhat similar. The feeling of love is growing more and more over time, but when the times are hard, love is always a choice rather than a feeling.
I remember one of the first questions that the people from CPS asked us was what kind of child we want, an older, a younger, a boy, a girl, and so on. And we wanted the adopted child to be younger than Elsa, and because Elsa was pretty young, she was 2 years old, that meant that the child we were about to adopt had to be a little bit younger than her. So we were quite enthusiastic and we said, okay, we're doing this, we're in this together, and it shouldn't take such a long time. So the people from the CPS had to slow us down a little bit and probably adjust our expectations, because they said prepare yourselves to wait a little bit more for such a young child and don't think that you will be ready with the process in a really short time.
So we showed up at the CPS and asked who we could talk about adoption. One of the ladies working there gave us an overview of what we would have to expect, as well as a list of documents we would have to gather to apply for the adoption permit. It took us around 2 weeks to gather all the documents and do all the health checks required, and among them we had to have a confirmation from a psychiatrist that we were normal enough to be adoptive parents. I remember the half-hour session with the psychiatrist poking at me with different questions, and one of them was, "Sir, do you think you understand women?" I'm really curious what you would have answered to that question, and I would really like to know that. A lot of memes raced through my mind. I don't remember what I answered exactly. I probably went with the classic, life is too short to understand women. And the guy nodded with compassion, giving me the required stamp on my file. And after almost 2 weeks of running around the city and getting all the required papers, we were finally able to submit the dossier and felt the first sentiment of achievement. It was on.
So the first 3 months were the evaluation period, and I was evaluated from a psychological, social and financial point of view. And I remember Gabi was attending some of the sessions, even though I was the only one who was adopting a child, because Gabi couldn't do the legal papers to adopt Christy. So they evaluated me, and I remember them asking us, I think over and over and over again, why do we want to adopt and what kind of child do we want to adopt? And what in the beginning seemed like a normal question, at the end of these 3 months we said, okay, how often are we gonna be asked the same question, and do we have to give the same answer, or what's going on? But I think it was helpful for us to know exactly what was our reason to adopt, and this helped us consider our decision and really think of the seriousness of the decision. So in the end it was helpful. And at the end of these 3 months I got the adoption permit, which gave us the right to go forward with the adoption.
The next day after we got our permit, we showed up at the CPS and we were allowed to view the hard to adopt children list. We basically spent over an hour in front of a computer screen and viewed pictures and details of different children that have been ready to be adopted for more than 9 months, but nobody adopted them for different reasons. And one important detail here is that even if you get adoption permit for a certain age range, for example 0 to 2 years, like in our case, you can choose children of any age from these lists. Now, another important thing to know here is that usually the health issues listed on the files of these children are much overstated, or sometimes even completely made up. And the reasons for these are, or could be many, ranging from doctors not knowing or not taking into consideration the abandonment trauma and the lack of love and attention these kids are suffering from, that most often can be expressed as mental issues or autism or something else, to more evil reasons like writing down made-up issues that would be labeled or would label the kid as handicapped and therefore bring the foster family more money for taking care of him or her, while making almost sure that that kid would probably never be adopted anymore. Having all that in mind, we decided to visit one child that lived in a remote village somewhere around 300 kilometers from Bucharest, with very little information in his dossier, but with the mention medium to severe handicap and the note QD30. We didn't know what that meant, but finally understood after we had visited him. QD was short for development percentage in Romanian, from a mental point of view. The boy was really sweet, but it became immediately clear that in this case his dossier, although incomplete, was not wrong. It was a hard reality check for us to realize that although we were open for a range of health issues, we were not ready for adopting this boy. Our limit was to go as far as a child that, despite a tough start and later development issues, could still take care of himself or herself as an adult. And that was not the case with the first boy we visited. So with heavy hearts, we went the next day to the CPS and signed that we do not want to continue the process and chose a second boy to visit. But as we were preparing for the second trip,
so as we were signing the papers that we could not continue with the first boy that we saw, the psychologist from the CPS told us that there's a little boy that was introduced in the system, in the matching system, and from her opinion she thought that he was a good match for us, and he had all the criteria that we were looking in for a child. And she said, I think he would be a good fit for you, but we have to wait because you are not the first ones on the waiting list, so we have to receive some answers from some other families that are on the list. So, okay, we went home, and after 2 hours, I remember my phone rang, and the same psychologist called me, and she said, look, it's really interesting what happened, because you remember the boy that I told you about? He was just matched with you, and you have to come, if you want, you have to come and see his description list, and stay and see if you want to continue with him. So I hopped in the car, and I went straight to the CPS, and I saw his list. And I told Gabi about it, and I think from the first moment I had the feeling that this might be our future child.
Yeah. So in our next video we will be telling the story of meeting our future son, Christian, our highs but also our really deep lows that we have experienced during those few weeks. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.
We would be really happy to hear from you, so please leave us a comment in the comment section below, and see you next time!